Hello friends, I'm Paul Shin from the YouTube channel that's making Model A's cool again. Today we're going to be working on Model A distributors. We're going to be building a distributor, but it's going to be different. You've seen me work on distributors lots and lots of times before. However, today we're going to be making a long shaft distributor on purpose. So here's the scoop. You've seen me build distributors plenty of times. What you have not seen me build on purpose is a long shaft distributor. Well, today that's what I'm going to be doing. My friend Merlin, who has the YouTube channel Merlin's Old School Garage, I'll link right here, he's getting into Model A's now, and he wants a reliable distributor. I said I'd help him out. So usually you see me build distributors with the short shaft, which means you use the stub shaft to get the drive off of the cam gear into the distributor. But the other option is this, where the distributor shaft itself is so long it engages that drive that connects to the cam, and you don't need a stub shaft. Well, Merlin wants a long shaft distributor, so I'm going to build him one. I don't know why. I should have just talked him out of it. So what I'm going to do is rebuild this distributor so that Merlin can use it in his Model A. Now this shaft is probably junk. Just so happens I have a new old stock Model A long shaft for a distributor. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to drill it. See now how the modern shafts are drilled? So there's a hole at the end, and then you get the screw with the hole in the end, and then you put oil down there, and then oil comes out there and lubes the upper bushing. Well, you can modify an original shaft like I've done with this one. I drilled this out and then drilled a little hole in the side of it. Well, I'm going to do the same thing with a long shaft, so stand by just a moment. Let me take care of that. One modified long shaft. Yeah. So this is a shaft I've had forever and ever. It's never been used to my knowledge. It looks brand new. So now it is a drilled long shaft. That's custom. So I'm going to incorporate this into Merlin's distributor, but first I need to clean out that distributor body because right now it looks really gross. Then I'm going to take this old shaft out, replace the bushings with new bushings, ream them, and then install the new shaft in the distributor housing. So stand by for that. So I've got the distributor housing completely stripped of everything. I cleaned it all off, bead blasted it. Now I'll just wipe it down with some thinner, get ready for some paint. I've installed the new bushings, so we're ready to go there. The old shaft is out, and as guessed, the old shaft has quite a bit of wear. This thing's junk. The new shaft is perfect. As you can see, it should go in nice and easy. So I've got the bushings reamed. I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on this shaft since this is brand new, and so I don't want to screw up the new bushings. Let's see how it fits in the housing now. Ooh. It's a little tight. I might have to re-ring this. I don't know. Let's see. No? Ooh, no. That's just a perfect fit. Zero play. That's what you want. You don't want any lateral motion play in the distributor shaft at all. Look at that. Nothing. This is perfect. All right. That's a good fit. I'm going to go ahead and start building a distributor. I'm just wiping this down with some lacquer thinner just to make sure I've got all the finger oils and everything off of here so the paint will stick to it. You'll notice that I have masked off the lower part of the distributor housing. That's the part that goes into the head when it's installed, and I want that to have good metal-to-metal contact, so I'm not going to paint that. I'm also going to try and keep the paint out of the inside if possible. That doesn't need to be painted. All right, I think we're just about ready. Take it outside and go psst. While the paint's drying, let's go ahead and talk about lower plates. The lower plate is what goes inside the distributor housing down on the bottom. It's what connects the ignition cable to the inside guts of the distributor. This is a typical reproduction lower plate. So this is the tab right here that the ignition cable screws against, makes contact. This is the part that the condenser, if you're using the original style condensers, connects to. Up here you'll notice that there's a flexible wire. It's fairly flexible. This is the part that connects to the points on the upper plate. Now, the problem with these is, first of all, this metal's pretty thin and pretty chintzy. And you hear a lot of people talk about, well, if you screw the ignition cable in too far, it'll short out. Well, the reason is, especially if you're using a reproduction lower plate, this metal's flimsy. You screw against that too far, and if you don't have the support of the condenser connected on there holding this in place, this will bend down from the pressure and actually short out to the lower plate. That is correct. However, if you use the correct condenser, and these are the ones to use because these do not fail, well, almost never, not like the V8 ones. Anyway, these actually add rigidity to that tab on the lower plate. You can screw the ignition cable in all the way, it's not going to short out. So that's another reason why I like to use the original style condensers. But anyway, this is still too chintzy and thin and crummy for my liking. So for Merlin's distributor, I'm using an original lower plate, and you'll see I've cleaned it all up. I've got it all set. Now this metal right here that the ignition cable screws down against is a lot thicker, a lot tougher, possibly made out of brass, not sure. It's all cleaned up. You'll see I attached a brand new wire to it, soldered right there. Real nice. This is that spaghetti wire I'm always talking about. Super flexible, will never fail on you. This is called test lead wire. That's it. And I'm going to link down in the description below. If you want to buy yourself some of this, you can get it on the Jungle website, just about anywhere. But this is the correct wire to use. It's lots and lots and lots of little tiny strands all woven together, so it's super flexible like wet spaghetti. I went ahead and put a proper terminal and some heat shrink on there so it won't rub against anything inside the distributor. That should be a lot better than this reproduction plate for Merlin. I want this thing to last him. Speaking of, Merlin, he's a little bit of a hot rodder, not much, but he's going to try and get some RPMs out of his Model A. So I'm going to go ahead and use what we call the modern points. They're really the V8 points, but people call them the modern points. These have a lot more spring on them than the original style points. Here's the original style. And these are okay. I mean, I love original points. I use them on all my cars. But if you're going to try and get some RPMs out of it, you need something with a lot more snap. And these are really, I mean, the spring tension on these is a lot tougher than the stock points. So you can get a lot more RPMs out of these. Now, these do tend to wear faster. I've seen stock points go 60, 70,000 miles, no problem. These points, I don't know, maybe 10,000. I don't know, kind of depends on a lot of factors. I will be polishing the distributor cams, so they will last, but there's just a lot more spring tension on these than there are on the stock points. So I'm going to assemble a new upper plate. I've got an original upper plate that I've cleaned up here. So I've already got some holes set in it. I'm going to go ahead and mount the modern points to this original upper plate, get this all set, bring the distributor housing in there, assemble it, put this thing together and test it. People ask in the comments all the time, how come my vise isn't bolted down? This is why, because I need to drag it around all over the place. So let's go ahead and assemble this. So we'll start off with our nice, pretty housing. Hey, what do you think? Turned out real nice, huh? Okay, we've got our semi-lubricated new long shaft that is drilled. So we can make sure that the upper bearing gets plenty of lubrication. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to trial fit our collar onto the bottom here, and we're going to see how much of a gap there is. So when the holes are lined up here, see how the hole lines up with the shaft right there? Okay, now you see there's a little bit of a gap right down there. See how we can move it right there? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure that gap, and then I'm going to get the appropriate thickness of fiber washer to put in there, and that's going to act as a bearing. That is the thickness right there. So go ahead and install that onto the shaft here. Go ahead and install my collar. Get the holes to line up. Look at that. Perfect. All right, now I'll just get a pin in there and this will be set. Now we're just about through. I'm going to tap it through, and then I'm going to mushroom out the ends of this pin. There we go. Done. Time to install the lower plate. There's just 2 screws that hold it. I'm using original screws in Merlin's distributor here. In fact, I'm using mostly original parts in this. There's a reason. You'll see when he comes out with his video. Trust me, it's a special reason. So I'm going to stick to mostly original parts in this. And we're going to build it like a 2829, so I'm going to use a lot of like the brass pins through the ears here, and I'm going to use a brass oiler on it. For 3031 it would be steel. Okay, lower plate is installed. Let's double check. And right through that hole, that's where the ignition cable goes. You can see right where that bottoms out. Perfect. And right here where the condenser goes, yep, there it is. All right, lower plate is tight. Now we're going to install the upper plate. And something to note, this hole right here, this diameter of this hole in the upper plate is very critical. When this fits into the distributor housing, you don't want any lateral movement at all of the upper plate. So that top part of where the shaft goes through in the distributor housing, you notice that's machined. It's supposed to fit that exactly. There should not be any play at all. So let's check that. Nope, none whatsoever. All right, perfect. So this moves very nice. There's no wobble in it. There's no play, no back and forth. This is perfect. All right, that's going to work just fine. So before we do that, we got to install the spring that pushes against the upper plate, gives that tension so the upper plate grounds against that inside rim of the distributor housing. It's important that the ends of your spring are very clean. Go run them on the wire brush if you have to, because that is also what makes electrical contact between the upper plate and the distributor body to ground it out when the points are closed. So now I just got to connect the points. Don't want to torque this too tight, just get it snug. That's it. Don't overdo it. Okay, let's put these together. Boom. Done. Now we need is a distributor cam, set the points gap, and test it. This is an example of one of the reproduction distributor cams you can buy that's got the B grind. You notice it kind of looks like waves. Yeah, sort of. Anyway, these are okay right out of the package, but I like to polish them with the Dremel. I detailed that in a previous video, which I will link to right here. Let's go ahead and install the distributor cam and check and see if there's any lateral movement. There is not. It's nice and tight. That's good. I'll put a screw. I've got the screw with the hole in it. Don't worry, I've got the one with the hole drilled in it. Since we now have a drilled long shaft distributor here, very custom. I'll just get this started here. I'm not gonna cinch down on it just yet. Okay. Now I'm going to check the points gap, and I'm going to adjust. So I've got my gaps here, got 18 thousandths. I'm going to go ahead and gap these points. So I'm going to rotate it until the cam's on one of its peaks. It's a little too big, so I'm going to skew this over just a little bit. Yeah, it's a little too tight. All right, I'll pull it just a little bit. That's almost exactly. All right, get a little more gap, not that much. This is the part I don't like about the modern points, is they're a little harder to adjust. The stock points, you just turn the screw to increase or decrease the gap. All right, there's 18 thousandths. Take my Phillips screwdriver. Ugh, Phillips screws in a Model A. It just doesn't seem right, does it? But this is one use for them right here. Go ahead and tighten these down so this doesn't move. But Merlin should have an easier time with these. I'm sure he's used to this type of points. Okay, so we're going to measure all 4 gaps, make sure they're the same. Yes. Yep, all 4 gaps are the same. This is good. Perfect. All right. Now we get to test the distributor. So I've got my voltmeter out here, and I've got it set to ohms and set on the settings so that every time the leads are touched together, it makes noise. So I've got an alligator clip here on the negative lead. I'll just ground that right here. The positive lead, I'm going to go ahead and stick that in the hole where the ignition cable is going to go. And then I'll just turn the distributor. Look at that. It works perfect. There's only 0.2 ohms of resistance when the points are closed, and a zillion ohms when the points are open. That's perfect. All right, now we can move on. I'm going to test the condenser and finish putting this together. This is an original type condenser, and these are the ones I really like using. I've never ever seen one of these fail. So I'm going to use my ohm meter here. I'm just going to connect one lead here to the outside case. I'm going to take this lead and connect it to the tip. To put this in capacitor mode, I should see about 0.25, 0.26 microfarad. There you go, 0.263, that's close enough. Now I'm going to put it on ohm scale and make sure that it shows infinity ohms. It does, good. So it's not acting like a resistor. This is a perfectly good condenser. This is going in. This is a 1928-29 style oiler, and you can see here it's a spring-loaded deal. Oil goes in the hole. That runs down into the distributor. When I had this distributor apart before it was painted, I made sure and blew out all the holes, especially this one, because this has to have a nice clear passage of oil to get to the bushings. So I'm going to make sure that the hole is facing up. It's just a press fit in, and I'll just tap that the rest of the way down. Very gently. There we go. One oiler installed. If for some reason you don't get the hole exactly straight up, you can stick a punch in there and rotate it. Just try to get it right the first time. Next, on to installing the condenser. So this is the threaded hole right here that the condenser is going to attach to, this part here. It goes in, there's going to be a screw that goes there. So it's important that you clear the paint off around here because this tab needs to make good contact right there. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that. No paint, ready to go. So next I'm going to install the condenser. First thing I'm going to do is make sure that the holes line up. So you can see that the tab and the condenser don't quite line up. So I'm going to adjust that ever so slightly. You just do it with a punch here. Just put it inside and just give it a little nudge. That's all it takes. Okay, now you see that the condenser lines up perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and get the screw for the end of the condenser. That goes right here. There is a fiber washer that some people add to this that's supposed to keep it from shorting. They didn't come with it originally from the factory, so I don't add them unless it's like just a driver car where I just don't care. Okay, let's go ahead and... So I'm going to tighten this screw down first, then I'll tighten the screw inside that makes contact with the tab. Okay, that's tight. Now I'll go ahead and tighten this. If you want to check to see if your condenser is making contact, you can go ahead and just put the ohm meter back on there, check the condenser with it installed, and make sure it still reads the same as it did on the bench. All right, now I got to put the ears on, so I'm going to find a good set of ears that match here. I'm trying to use original stuff for Merlin here. There's a pair that looks pretty good. I think I'll just clean these up and install these two here. Perfect. Well, let's go clean these up. Ta-da! All nice and clean. All right, let's get the vise back over here. I'm going to mount this back in the vise. Since this is a 28-29, I'm using the brass rivets here. So make sure you get them the right way. I like to make them point backwards. So the side of the distributor that you see, you'll see the brass head. I just get my pliers, make them nice and big. Just bite down on it and fold them over. Done. All right, the other side. Split it around so you can see. Make sure to get this the right way. You don't want it this way, you want it this way. Okay, so I'm going to make the rivet point towards me. Put a screwdriver in there and split them first. Get it started. Then I take my pliers, fold them over. Done. Installed. I'm going to get this all lubed up and ready to go for Merlin so he doesn't have to do anything. I use Super Lube on the cam. You can buy this just about anywhere. The Jungle website. I'll even link to it in the description below. Make it easy for you. So I'll lube the distributor cam with that. Now I'll get my oiler and I'll put a couple drops down the shaft. It only takes a couple drops. Don't over lube that, otherwise you'll have a distributor full of oil. A couple drops here in the oiler on the side. Call that good. Rotate it around a little bit. Wipe off the excess here. All right. All lubed. Very nice. Let's put a body on it, a rotor. Call it good. Okay, so I'll put a cap on here. I believe this is an original distributor top. Okay, make sure that this has full throw. I do not have any original in good shape rotors, so I'm going to use a reproduction rotor thanks to Mike's Affordable. One rotor. I turn that on and make sure that it clears the buttons in the distributor housing. Yes, it does. You want to set this, you got about a 20 thousandths gap between the rotor and the buttons in the distributor. And the way you do that is by bending this tab up or down to get it closer or further away from the buttons inside the cap. Talking about those. Okay, now what I believe to be original cap. Fits nice. There we go. One distributor. Done. Ready to, and just like that, it's ready to bubble wrap up, put it in a box, send it to Merlin. He's going to install it in a very special Model A. I keep saying that throughout the video, but trust me, this car is very special. Why? You notice I've been taking some extra care to make sure I used a 29 housing. I used the 29 brass parts on it. Why did I make it so 29 and make it so original? This is going in a super special car. You'll get to see this on Merlin's channel. This is going in Model A serial number. Are you ready for this? 810123. Go ahead, look it up. I'll wait. 810123 was the very first Model A built for 1929. Yep. The first Model A to roll off the assembly line in January 1929. Merlin's got that car in his garage right now. Check it out. I'll link to his channel below. This distributor is for that special car. So speaking of cars, although that one's not special, you notice that Gandalf the Green is back in the shop. Well, finally, I'm going to get to do the top on that. As you probably could tell by my attire, it is now warmer weather. So, Gandalf's getting a top. Finally. Make sure to tune in the next video. Thank you so much. I can't wait to see you on the next one.